Hey everybody, just got done at the gym. It was pretty good today. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I was only there for like a little over an hour, but it was good. I enjoyed it. Today I want to talk about, I don't know, I kind of want to talk about the ISIS and the Syrian refugee situation for a little while today. Make sure I'm not covering up the microphone there. I really want to talk about that today because I feel it's really an important discussion that's going on right now. And I feel a lot of people, I don't know, I feel a lot of people are viewing this in a very negative way. They're viewing it in a way that's, I feel, inconducive to having a culture of positive people and a culture of people who truly want to help others and who really want to see other people being happy. So let's talk about the refugees first. So they want to be able to bring some of these refugees into the United States. Now, if you haven't taken the time to learn, to research exactly how that process works, those refugees go through a 12 to 18 month long survey process, which involves face-to-face interviews, which involves extensive background checks and clearance checks and verification of identity and a lot of those things before they're allowed asylum within the United States. So, I know a lot of people are viewing this as they're just letting people just come into the country with, basically no strings attached, but that's really not the way it is. There's really a fairly long process that goes into people being allowed to come into this country as a refugee. So I think that's important to remember and to think about in this situation. And then I also kind of want to talk about a lot of the negativity that people are getting here towards the refugees. And I see a lot of people saying that this is just a ploy by ISIS to sneak terrorists into the United States. Now, if you pay attention at all to the United States politics, you know that we have millions of illegal immigrants in this country. It's a huge topic of debate. It's a huge political discussion. If the goal was to get people into the U.S., the amount of work and effort it would take to get somebody disguised as a refugee, to get their background to check out, to get all of that work to go through, that would be a lot of work. When apparently it's not that hard to sneak somebody into this country. So if they were really trying to do this, they wouldn't go through all of the effort through all the convolution and the bullshit that it would take to disguise somebody as a refugee. Maybe it happens. Maybe it will happen. Maybe there is one. Maybe there are two. But odds are those people are going to get found out during this 12 to 18 month process. And that there's a huge amount of scrutiny there. But if they sneak somebody in illegally, then there's little to no scrutiny because they're here illegally. There's not somebody, pounding their fist against their forehead saying, "Who are you? Who were you? Who did you know? What did you, what have you done in your life?" So I feel that's a huge topic, that's a huge thing there. Why do something in a way that takes 100 times more work, that is 100 times more likely to be found out than something else? So I think that thought process is really just ill thought out. And I feel that thought process is very ill-informed. So honestly, that kind of bothers me there, that people are using that as an argument. But another thing I want to really talk about is the history of this country. At one point, most everybody who came to this country from somewhere else came in some form of refugee status. Whether they came, they emigrated legally from their old country and came here in order to find a better life to avoid whatever was going on in their country, or they came as a refugee. I would get, if I had to guess, I would guess at least 70% of people in this country have somebody within 3 or 4 generations in their family that came here in some form of refugee status. Personally, I know my grandfather, not the grandfather that I have, but the one who died before I was born. Him, his siblings, and his mother, they came here as refugees during World War II. Now, in World War II, you had a very similar thing. You had the Nazis who were persecuting Germans who didn't support them, and they were persecuting Jewish people. Now, my family happened to be Germans who just they didn't buy into it. They said, no, this is bullshit. So they spent time in war camps, and they ended up as refugees here. Now, no, looking in hindsight, if you knew, that the Nazis were everything that was going on in World War II, if you knew that all of that was going on, and there were German and Jewish people who were being vehemently persecuted by Nazis, and they wanted to come here to find asylum, to find a safe place to live, and not have to live with that weight over their head. Looking back, knowing what happened and knowing how that worked, would you tell them no? It's the same thing. Like, it really is. And, like, my grandfather, he ended up joining the military. He defended the country that gave his family asylum. He fought for the country that gave his family that opportunity, and that, gave them that decision of life, So maybe I'm a bit biased in this situation because I have such close family ties to a refugee story. But at the same time, if you think about in your day-to-day life, if you have somebody who's over you who is evil and mean and they're just terrible people, and somebody else takes you and they shelter you, the gratitude you're going to have for that person or those people is huge. And I feel that's going to be a lot of the same in this situation. And then the last thing I really want to talk about is this whole Muslims are evil, Islam is evil concept that seems to float around on the internet. I honestly have extraordinary vehemence towards people who have this view. Because let's take the history. Let's take some history for a minute here. Let's start around the Middle Ages. A group of people would torture and kill anybody who studied science and tried to further scientific investigation of reality and cause and effect and what makes things the way they are and how to make things better. This same group of people would also kill people who created art that didn't fit within their ideal of what art should be. The same group of people, over a piece of land and imaginary relics, killed millions of people who belonged to other groups simply because they felt that they didn't have the right to be on this land because they weren't of that same religion, or killed them because they felt they didn't have right to hold or to own these relics that they perceived as holy to them because these people belonged to other religions. Now, those are huge portions. Those are the vast majority of this group of people at one point in history. Now, if you take more recent history and you take very small groups, a very small group of these people eventually became the Nazi Party. And they persecuted and killed millions of Jews and Greeks and Germans who did not fill and Gypsies, who did not fill their ideal of what humanity should be. Now, another very small group of these people became the KKK, and they persecuted and killed black people in the United States and still do. And another small group of these people go to soldiers' funerals and protest, saying we should celebrate the death of those soldiers because it's God's punishment towards the United States for their particular religious reasons, which I'm not going to go into right now because that's not the point. Now, would it be fair of me to say that because that is the history and that is the minority, the very small minority of Christians, that therefore all Christians are terrible people who are going to kill black people, who are going to kill Jewish people, Greek people, people who are not blonde hair, blue-eyed, people who are not going to fit into this ideal? We can't let Christians in because they are going to do these evil things that these people have done and use their religion as a backing for. Is that right to say? It's really not. And that's the same thing that's happening now. ISIS and some of the other, like Al-Qaeda, like those are extremely small, very overzealous, very erratic, small groups of people who happen to belong to this one religion. And they're not just killing other people from other religions. They kill people from their own religion who they feel aren't very specifically fitting what they believe their religion should be. So I don't know. People who, if you're going to make that generalized statement that all Islamic people or all Muslims are bad and evil people because ISIS exists, because Al-Qaeda exists, if you're Christian and you're making that statement, that also means that you are a terrible, evil person because the KKK exists, neo-Nazis exist, Nazis existed. That you are an evil person because of that. That is the same thing. You're saying the same exact thing. So, I don't know. I just think people really should take the time to think, and they should really take the time to learn a few things before they make an overzealous bandwagon statement, especially when regarding an entire group of people, rather than focusing on the small group. I agree, ISIS is bad. Like, we should not stand for ISIS and their ideals. We should not let people from ISIS into this country. We should be fighting against ISIS to stop the things that they're doing. But that doesn't mean a war on the Muslim religion as a whole. And I really feel that a lot of people, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, you really should take a look at the history and the birth of your religion, because all three of those religions originally came from the same place. They all started very, very similar and slowly over time grew different. And so you should really look into that, because you're really saying a religion based on a lot of the same ideals you have is a bad religion, is what you're saying at that point, based on a very small group of people. I don't know, guys. That's really what I've got today. I just really wanted to, I wanted to make that statement because that's my view on it. And I just really feel that a lot of people need to think before they jump on the bandwagon. So, talk to you guys again tomorrow. Bye.